Welcome to this webinar on the Point in Time Count Unsheltered Survey. My name is Amy Stetzel, and I am the project manager with Minnesota's Office to Prevent and End Homelessness. My boss, Kathy Timbrook, and I have been working closely with all of the continuum of care coordinators across the state to prepare for this year's Point in Time Count. On behalf of all of us, thank you for your time and commitment to ensuring individuals, youth, and families experiencing homelessness across the state are identified and connected to the services they need to become stably housed. This webinar will give instructions, explanations, and some helpful tips in completing the Point in Time Unsheltered Survey. So, what is the Point in Time Count? Well, the point in time count, or PIT, as I will usually refer to it, is one of the main ways we measure homelessness in our state. It provides us with a snapshot of what homelessness looks like across Minnesota at one point in time. The federal government requires that each state attempt to count all people experiencing homelessness on one particular night of the year. The federal government also requires that every state conduct their PIT count within the last 10 days in January. This year, Minnesota's PIT count is on the night of Thursday, January 28, 2016. The PIT count includes a count of people who are living in unsheltered situations, those who are living outside, on the streets, in abandoned buildings, etc., and of those who are temporarily sheltered, those who are living in emergency shelters, transitional housing programs, or put up in motels through a social service program. This webinar will focus on the unsheltered portion of the PIT count. So why do we do the PIT count? Well, we do the PIT count for a few different reasons. It helps us to understand the scope of homelessness and identify trends so we can better target our resources, improve services, and identify gaps in service. We use the data to justify current and new services and programs. The data really helps us to tell our story and makes the case for new resources. It also helps us raise our community awareness and political awareness. It is a critical source of national data on the number and characteristics of people who are homeless in the United States. As we've already mentioned, the PIT count is a federal requirement. Additionally, the PIT count is the main data source used for measuring national progress in meeting the goals and opening doors, the federal strategic plan to prevent and end homelessness. And PIT count data is provided to Congress on the general homeless population and subpopulations of homeless persons, including veterans, families, chronically homeless individuals, and youth across the nation. Lastly, data collected through the PIT is used as one of the main tools to measure progress on Minnesota's Heading Home plan to prevent and end homelessness. The PIT count is a statewide effort led by our 10 continuum of care regions throughout the state. Working together as a state is critical to achieve the goals of preventing and ending homelessness for the families, youth, and individuals who are experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness in Minnesota. In alignment with the federal government, the state of Minnesota is working towards the population goals of resolving and preventing future veteran homelessness, ending chronic homelessness in 2017, preventing and ending homelessness among youth unaccompanied by parents or guardians in 2020, and preventing and ending homelessness among families with children in 2020. As we noted before, the results from the PIT count are how we as a state measure our progress towards achieving these goals. So what's new in 2016? Well, Star Wars: The Force Awakens has surpassed Avatar to become the top-grossing film in North America. However, when inflation is factored in, Gone with the Wind remains the highest-grossing film in history, with the original Star Wars as a close runner-up. Just so everyone knows, Star Wars: The Force Awakens is still behind great movies and two of my favorites, The Sound of Music and E.T., the cutest extraterrestrial ever. So I'm sure what you're saying right now is, no, what's new in 2016 for the PIT count? Well, what's new in 2016 for the PIT count is that two of the biggest changes we see this year are an update to the definition of chronic homelessness and a deployment of veterans rapid response teams across the state on the night of the count, both of which we will go over in much more detail later in the webinar. Additionally, some of you might remember that last year we were required to ask anyone who identified as transgender if they were male to female or female to male transgender. We no longer will need to do that. If someone identifies as transgender, you mark that category on the survey and do not have to ask them any further details. Continuing in 2016, the same Unsheltered Survey tool will again be administered across the state on the night of the pit count. This common survey tool will provide us with a strong foundation of data to work from to allow us to tell a better, more consistent story of what homelessness looks like across all of Minnesota by identifying trends and root causes from year to year and allowing us to compare differences in these stories between areas of the state, north versus south, metro versus greater, etc. Minnesota will continue to focus on veterans in this year's pit count by asking targeted questions, referring veterans to services through the Veterans Registry, and linking veterans directly to housing options and resources using rapid response teams. There will be much more detail on veterans coming up later in the webinar, so we'll save more detail on this subject for later. Youth household information will again be collected for both parenting youth and unaccompanied youth under the age of 25. And lastly, persons who report identification in at least 2 race categories will be included in the multiple races category during data analysis. We have not included the answer of multiple races as an option on the actual survey, as there was quite a bit of confusion on that piece last year. So now let's dive into specifics about the Unsheltered Survey. So the Minnesota's Unsheltered Survey, there's one survey and 3 ways you can administer it. You can use any of the 3 formats for the Unsheltered Pit Count. Each format is asking the same questions in the same order, so we will be capturing the same data in the same way. Capturing the same data in the same way is the critical part of the sentence. I've said this before and I'm going to say it again. Using the same survey across the state allows us to tell a better, more consistent story of what homelessness looks like across all of Minnesota by identifying trends and root causes from year to year, and allowing us to compare differences in those stories between areas of the state. Please refer to your COC coordinator or site director for direction on which format to use in your region. The 3 formats for Minnesota's Unsheltered Survey are the one-page Unsheltered Survey. This is one survey that must be completed for each person in a couple or family. For couples, families, and groups of unaccompanied youth identifying as a household, attach each survey together and include a household ID at the end of the survey. First initial and first 3 letters of the last name of the head of household are the household ID. The 2-page Unsheltered Grid Survey. This is a longer format of the survey, but what it does is it allows you to fill out information for every person in a couple or family unit in just one survey. And the last and final format is the online tool. Your COC coordinator has copies of the 1-page and 2-page Unsheltered Survey tools for your use, as well as the link to the online tool. Again, all 3 formats are the same Unsheltered Survey, same questions in the same order. The difference is in how you administer the survey. It is up to each COC region to decide which format they would like their volunteers to use on the night of the count. Your COC coordinator will provide direction to you on which of the survey formats you should use. Okay, so let's dive in and highlight some of the most important details to successfully completing the Unsheltered Survey. This webinar will not cover every question in the survey, as most of the questions are very straightforward, and many of the directions for completing the survey are written right on the survey tool itself. I have highlighted here those areas that are new or may require further explanation. Before we get going, please have an Unsheltered Survey in front of you so you can follow along as you watch the webinar. So getting started. As you know, first impressions can start any relationship off on good or bad footing. When you are having a short interaction with someone that has the potential to ask very personal questions, ensuring a positive first impression becomes even more important to get right. Approach any respondent you come in contact with in the same way you would like to be approached to complete a survey. Introduce yourself, explain what you are doing, be respectful of their answers and their time, and remember to speak clearly. You will notice that as much as we could, we have tried to write clear directions for administering the survey right on the survey tool itself, including the initial, what I like to refer to as check questions. These check questions are questions 2 through 4 in the survey and are referred to as check questions because the respondent's answer to each of the questions determine whether or not you will continue asking them the questions on the survey. These check questions help us to make sure that we are asking the right people the survey. You will notice that directions identifying which answers would cause you to stop surveying someone are written right on the survey tool. Question 2 asks if they will be sleeping outside tonight or have been staying temporarily with family or friends. Sleeping outside can mean sleeping on the street, in a vehicle, staying up all night, sleeping in an abandoned building, a storage shed, a fish house, or a home without functional utilities, or any place not meant for human habitation. Please note that while HUD does not include being doubled up in their definition of homelessness, we as a state are interested in learning how many unsheltered people we come in contact with that are staying temporarily with family and friends. Questions later on in the survey will help us separate those who are doubled up from those who are HUD definition homeless. So if they answer no, they are not staying outside or staying temporarily with family or friends, stop the survey. But if yes, question 3 asks if they are willing to participate in a short survey. If they answer no, thank them for their time and stop the survey. But if they answer yes, they are willing to participate, ask if they have already taken the survey. If yes, they have already taken the survey, thank them for their time and stop the survey. But if no, they have not already taken the survey, continue on to gather the required data for question number 5, which is first and last name, initials, and age. And as always, explain that the survey is confidential and it will help our community to better respond to the needs of people experiencing homelessness. So to sum it all up, use the Unsheltered Survey if the respondent correctly answers all of the check questions, which are questions 2 through 4, and you are able to gather the following initial information from the respondent, their initials and their age, or if the person you are speaking to does not want to give you their initials or age, but they will answer all of the questions in the survey. The questions asking for initials and age are used to make sure we aren't duplicating information. Some people may not want to give you their initials or age, and that's totally fine. The important thing is that if they are willing to answer all of the other questions on the survey. Their answers to the survey questions are much more important than whether or not they want to provide us with their initials or age. If you cannot answer the check questions or the identifying information because you don't want to disturb someone who is sleeping or who may not be able to answer for a variety of reasons, you should use the Unsheltered Observation tool to gather information on the persons or people you are observing. Please note, you may not be able to answer all of the questions on the observation tool, and that's okay. Please just answer as many questions as you are able to. Your COC coordinator will provide you with the Unsheltered Observation tool. Question 6 asks, where are you sleeping the night of January 28th, 2016? The night of Thursday, January 28th, 2016 refers to any time between sunset on Thursday the 28th to sunrise on Friday, January 29th. Depending on when you are surveying someone during the count, you may have to adjust the language for this question just a bit. For example, if you are surveying someone at 5:30 a.m. the morning of Friday, January 29th, you should ask, where did you sleep last night, the night of January 28th, 2016? You will notice that the last box you are able to check for this question is temporarily doubled up with family or friends. As I noted earlier in the webinar, HUD does not include being doubled up in their definition of homelessness, but we as a state are interested in learning how many unsheltered people we come in contact with that are staying temporarily with family and friends. This question will allow us to separate those who are doubled up from those who are HUD definition homeless. Question 8 in the survey asks about household composition. Let's take a moment to review HUD household composition definitions. We will focus first on adults, young adults, and children. An adult is any person who is age 25 and older. A young adult is any person age 18 through 24. A child is a person age 0 through 17 who is living with a parent, guardian, or caregiver. As we just reviewed, an adult is defined in the PIC count as a person age 25 or older, and they can fall into 3 categories within the PIC count. Adults 25 and older can be single adults, they can be adult couples, or they can be in adult-headed families. Adult-headed families are headed by one or more adults age 25 or older and include children age 0 to 17, or young adults age 18 to 24. The first box under question 8 refers to adults age 25 plus. If you are surveying a single adult, adult couple, or adult-headed family where the head of household is age 25 or older, please select a household composition type from this box that most applies to the adult you are surveying situation. Please note, single adult parents should be marked as an adult-headed family. Only single adults without children should be marked in the single adult category. Youth is an umbrella term that refers to people aged 0 to 24 who are living on their own without a parent or guardian. Youth may or may not have their own dependent children. The youth household composition category includes both parenting youth and unaccompanied youth. A parenting youth is a young adult or minor who is living on their own without a parent or guardian and has their own dependent children. An unaccompanied youth is a person aged 0 through 24 who is living on their own without a parent or guardian. As we just reviewed, a youth is defined as anyone aged 0 to 24 who is living on their own without a parent or guardian. Youth living on their own without a parent or guardian fall into one of two categories for the PIC count. The first is parenting youth, who are parenting dependent children of their own, or unaccompanied youth. These two categories are broken down further by age for parenting youth and household type for unaccompanied youth. Please take a look at the second box located under question 8 on your survey. If you are surveying a parenting or unaccompanied youth under the age of 25, please select a household composition type from this box that most applies to the youth you are surveying situation. Parenting youth can be parenting young adults, ages 18 to 24, or parenting minors under age 18. Please note the number of children in the parenting youth family you are surveying. Or please select the household composition type that most applies to the unaccompanied youth under the age of 25 that you are surveying. Unaccompanied youth can be single youth, a youth couple, or a group of youth presenting as a household. Now we'll move on to questions around age, gender, ethnicity, and race. Question 9 asks respondents their age. Please indicate which age range, under 18, 18 to 24, 25 to 55, or 56 plus, the respondent age falls into. If the respondent does not know their age or refuses to provide that information, please choose the Don't Know, Refuse to Answer option. Question 10 asks respondents to identify their gender in one of the following three categories: male, female, or transgender. Question 14 asks about ethnicity. Ethnicity options are Hispanic Latino or non-Hispanic non-Latino, and ethnicity should be reported for all individuals. Question 15 asks respondents to identify their race from a list of options. Race options are American Indian or Alaska Native, Asian, African, Black or African American, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, and white. At least one race should be reported for each individual. Please note, if the respondent identifies at least two specific race categories, they will automatically be included in the multiple race category when we do our data analysis. Chronic homelessness. Questions 12 and 13 are asked to determine whether someone is chronically homeless. So the definition of chronically homeless is an individual, family, or youth who has a disability and has been homeless for 1 year or more, or has been homeless on 4 or more occasions in the last 3 years, where the combined length of time homeless in those occasions is at least 12 months. The piece of the definition that is orange is the new addition to the chronic homelessness definition, and you'll see questions that get at that piece of the definition on the survey. So questions 12 and 13 ask, have you been continuously homeless for a year or more? Yes or no? And if the person answers yes to question 12, you do not have to answer question 13. Since question 12 already puts them into the chronically homeless category under the housing portion of it. But if they answer no, I have not been continuously homeless for a year or more, then please ask them question 13. Since January 2013, have you been homeless 4 or more times, yes or no? Questions 19 and 20 ask questions regarding disabling conditions. These questions help us understand the many health barriers that are faced by those experiencing homelessness, as well as providing us with the disability information we need for the chronically homeless definition. Please make sure to ask these two questions of everyone you survey, including those under the age of 18. As you probably know, Minnesota has committed to end veteran homelessness. That is enshrined as one of the priorities of our state's Heading Home plan. Since 2010, veteran homelessness has decreased by 54% in Minnesota, but we have more work to do. The point-in-time count is a critical vehicle for measuring our progress on this goal. Let me say a word about why we are focusing so intently on veteran homelessness. First, there is a clear moral imperative to ensure that those who have risked their lives for the nation we call home have a home of their own to go to. What is significant about veteran homelessness is that this moral imperative has motivated tremendous efforts in the private sector and at every level of government. Put another way, veterans are the one population where the resources dedicated to solving the problem are actually scaled at a level that we can solve the problem. That makes the need to reliably document our efforts even more important, so that we can show that when the right resources are available, we can end homelessness for every veteran and indeed for everyone. Thanks to a collaboration of many organizations all across the state, we've made remarkable progress on this goal. Starting with last year's point-in-time count, when veterans experiencing homelessness all across the state began joining the Homeless Veteran Registry, we have a better understanding than ever before of the specific needs and challenges that veterans who remain homeless face. This graph shows our current progress on the goal. As you can see, in 2015, we housed more veterans than we found during the point-in-time count a year ago. But there are still 265 veterans we now know by name who still need a housing solution. For over 100 of these veterans, we have a housing plan in place, a way to pay rent, and access to ongoing support. For most of these veterans, the remaining challenge is finding a willing landlord, and our registry team is actively working with these veterans on that challenge. For the remaining 157 veterans, we still need a housing plan. That's where a new approach to this year's point-in-time count comes in. To help us reach the goal, especially for those veterans without a housing plan, we're approaching the point-in-time count a little differently this year. The gist is that we want to make sure that we find every veteran we can, and when we do, that we make sure that every veteran is on a path to housing. We will do this by connecting veterans in real time with the housing planner using the LinkVet hotline. LinkVet will confirm that they are a veteran, determine whether they are on the registry, and whether they have a housing plan. If they are a veteran but don't have a housing plan, we'll connect them in real time with the housing planner. This will look a little differently for the Twin Cities and Greater Minnesota. In the Twin Cities, we're setting up the Cedar Street National Guard Armory as an emergency shelter location. There will be a warm meal, a warm bed, and staff on hand who can work with the veteran to develop a housing plan and help them access other benefits. When a veteran is found, drivers will be dispatched to the veteran's location. We ask that pit count staff or volunteers wait with the veteran until the driver arrives. Veterans who choose not to come will be invited to join us for a warm meal the following day. In Greater Minnesota, we're approaching this primarily over the phone. The basic idea is the same. Over the phone, veterans can get connected with a housing planner. If the pit count staff or volunteer can lend the veteran their phone, great. If not, veterans can call the hotline anytime through noon the following day to be connected in real time with a housing planner. The most important piece of information is this. Whenever a veteran is found, call the LinkVet hotline and they will guide you from there. LinkVet will be available starting at 3 a.m. on January 28th. They can be reached at 888-LinkVet or 888-546-5838. For the purposes of this PIT Unsheltered survey, we will treat any adult over age 18 who answers yes to either of the first two veteran questions as a potential veteran. These questions are, did you serve in the United States Armed Forces, which includes the Army, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard? And did you serve on active duty or in the National Guard or Reserve? If the veterans you identify are not already on the registry, we need them to sign a registry application available at the web address shown here. Please turn in all your completed release forms to your COC coordinator or site leader. All release forms should be turned into a COC coordinator within 24 hours after the evening of the pit count. COC coordinators will fax in all completed release forms to LinkVet at 218-346-2338. Remember, these forms contain personal identifying information, so please treat them accordingly and with care. If a respondent answers yes to either veterans question but does not want to talk to a housing planner and does not want to join the registry, please ask them backup questions on the Unsheltered Survey tool. Again, all of the directions for these questions are written right on your Unsheltered Survey tool. So after the survey is completed, thank the person you surveyed. Print your name and indicate which organization you are with or your home-based pit count site in the space provided at the end of the survey. Put the survey in a safe place while you are surveying others, and then return all surveys and veteran registry release forms to your COC coordinator or site leader at the end of your pit count shift. So within 24 hours of the count, all forms should be and must be returned to your COC coordinator. While the pit count provides us with the number of those experiencing homelessness on a given night in our state, it is not just about counting people, as the veterans information we just went over really exemplifies. It is also about making sure the right amount of resources are provided to connect people to the services they need. And on the night of the count, it may mean connecting people you come in contact with to services they need that night. And I know we just went over all of those resources and how to connect veterans you come in contact with, but you may and quite likely will come in contact with those who aren't veterans as well. I'd like to first tell you a brief story of a woman named Fern. This is a picture of Fern. As you can see, Fern looks like the stereotypical picture of someone who many people think will always be homeless. Her hunched over body language sends the message that she wants to be left alone. She looks very isolated and cut off. She is very self-protecting. You can't tell if she is a man or a woman. All of her belongings are packed and hanging on the cart next to her. Well, a street outreach worker in Hennepin County met Fern and started working with her. And less than a year later, this was Fern. This is a picture of Fern and the street outreach worker Joseph, who met her, got to know her, and together they worked so that in less than a year, Fern was a much different person than the woman who'd been living on the streets a year prior. She was housed, healthy, and safe. If you come across someone who needs help on the night of the count, here are some resources for you to connect with. Your COC coordinator. Have the phone number of your COC coordinator on hand. They know all of the resources available in your region and will be able to connect you with the information and resources you need. Street outreach teams. Not all regions have street outreach teams, but know if your region does. And if so, make sure you have their contact information with you on the night of the count. Day One Hotline. Day One is a statewide network of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, youth and community advocacy programs in Minnesota. Day One hosts a statewide crisis hotline that connects callers to the nearest service or agency in their geographic area. United Way 211. United Way 211 provides free and confidential health and human service information and covers the entire state. 211 call centers are staffed 24/7 by trained information and referral specialists who quickly assess needs and refer callers to the help they need. The Senior Linkage Line. The Senior Linkage Line is the Minnesota Board on Aging's free statewide information and assistance service and covers all 87 counties of Minnesota. LinkVet. LinkVet is online support which is available 7 days a week for Minnesota veterans and their families. LinkVet is staffed by a team of support specialists trained through the Minnesota Department of Veteran Affairs. Here are some other resources for you in case you really want to dig in to all of the pit count updates that were made for the 2016 pit count. Feel free to go ahead and do that and access the link that I provided here. You can also really dig into the methodology of the point in time count. If you want to learn more, you can access this methodology guide as well. Here is both my information and Eric's information. Eric Grumdahl is our special advisor on veterans homelessness and is leading up all things veterans on the veterans piece of things. So feel free to reach out to either of us. Our phone numbers and emails are listed here. And last but certainly not least, Dress warm, have fun, and thank you so much for your help.